This story, titled Between Loyalty and Love, I'm Claire, a 42-year-old nurse from Kansas City. I've spent my life caring for others, whether it's my patients, my family, or my friends. But what happens when the person you care for the most doesn't seem to care about how you feel? What happens when love feels like a battle you never signed up for? When I met Matt, it felt like the start of something beautiful. He was charming, funny, and kind, the kind of man who could make a room light up just by walking in. At 45, he had a quiet confidence that drew me in. We connected instantly, sharing stories over coffee, bonding over our love for hiking, and dreaming about the future we might build together. But every love story has its challenges, and ours came in the form of Sarah. Sarah was Matt's best friend, a bright, vivacious woman who had been in his life for over a decade. She was everything I wasn't: bold, outgoing, and unapologetically opinionated. At first, I didn't think much of her presence in his life. I knew Matt valued their friendship, and I wanted to respect that. But as time went on, I couldn't ignore the way she made me feel. It started with small comments, little digs disguised as jokes. "Oh, Claire, you're so lucky Matt doesn't mind your quirks," she said once during dinner, her smile sharp and her eyes challenging. I laughed it off, trying to brush away the sting. But it didn't stop there. She constantly inserted herself into our plans, inviting herself along on our dates or showing up unannounced at his apartment. She had an uncanny ability to make me feel like the outsider, like I didn't belong in their world. One evening, as Matt and I were preparing dinner, Sarah dropped by uninvited. She leaned against the counter, her eyes flicking between us. "You know, Matt," she said casually, "I don't think Claire really understands you the way I do. Remember that time in college when we stayed up all night talking about your dreams? Those were the days." Her words hung in the air, heavy and pointed. I waited for Matt to say something, to defend me, to set a boundary. But he just laughed, brushing it off as if it were harmless. Later that night, I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Matt," I said, my voice shaking, "why do you let her talk to me like that? Why don't you ever stand up for me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Claire, you're overreacting. That's just Sarah. She doesn't mean anything by it." But it did mean something. To me, the pattern continued. Sarah's comments grew bolder, her presence more intrusive. She questioned my opinions, dismissed my feelings, and always seemed to find a way to make me feel small. And every time, Matt shrugged it off, telling me I was being too sensitive. The breaking point came during a weekend getaway Matt and I had planned, a chance to reconnect and escape the noise of our daily lives. But on the morning of our trip, Sarah called, claiming she needed Matt's help with something urgent. "I'll just stop by her place quickly," he said, grabbing his keys. "I'll be back in no time." But no time turned into hours. By the time he returned, the day was half gone, and my patience was wearing thin. "Do you realize what you've just done?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. He looked at me, confused. "Claire, it's not a big deal. Sarah needed me." "But what about me, Matt?" I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "What about us? Every time she calls, you drop everything. Every time she undermines me, you stay silent. Do you even see how this is affecting me?" His silence was deafening. That night, as I lay awake, I felt a heaviness settle over me. How had we gotten here? How had the love I once cherished become a source of pain and doubt? I thought about the moments I had brushed aside my feelings, telling myself that things would get better, that Matt would eventually see how much I was hurting. But now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to confront Matt, not just about Sarah, but about the way he had dismissed my feelings, the way he had allowed her to come between us. As we sat across from each other at the breakfast table, I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Matt," I began, "I love you. I really do. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep feeling like I'm competing with your best friend for a place in your life. I need to know where I stand. I need to know if you're willing to put our relationship first." He looked at me, his expression a mix of guilt and confusion. "Claire, I never meant to make you feel this way. Sarah is important to me, but so are you. I didn't realize how much this was affecting you." "But you did, Matt," I said, my voice firm. "You saw the way she treated me, the way she disrespected our relationship, and you chose to stay silent. You chose to dismiss my feelings instead of standing by me." He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "You're right. I've been blind to how much this has hurt you. And I'm sorry, Claire. I don't want to lose you." His words were sincere, but sincerity alone wouldn't be enough. "Matt," I said, If we're going to move forward, there need to be boundaries. You need to make it clear to Sarah that our relationship is a priority. And if she can't respect that, then maybe it's time to reevaluate her place in your life. He hesitated, his loyalty to Sarah clashing with his love for me. But eventually he nodded. You're right, Claire. I'll talk to her. I'll set boundaries. I don't want you to feel like you're second to anyone. His promise was a step in the right direction, but only time would tell if he could follow through. As I left his apartment that morning, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. I wanted to believe in our love, to believe that we could overcome this. But part of me wondered if some battles were too great, if some relationships were meant to teach us lessons rather than last forever. The days following Matt's promise were filled with cautious optimism. He assured me that he had spoken to Sarah, setting boundaries for their friendship. He told her that while she would always be important to him, our relationship was his priority now. At first, it seemed like things were improving. Sarah stopped dropping by unannounced, and her pointed comments became less frequent. For the first time in months, I felt like Matt and I were truly on the same team. We started spending more quality time together, just the two of us. It felt like we were rediscovering the connection that had drawn us together in the first place. But beneath the surface, doubts lingered. One evening, as Matt and I were cooking dinner, his phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen and saw Sarah's name. My stomach tightened. It's just Sarah, he said quickly, silencing the notification. I'll call her back later. I nodded, but the familiar pang of unease crept in. It wasn't that I didn't trust Matt. I did. But Sarah's presence in his life had cast a long shadow over our relationship, one that wasn't easy to shake. A few weeks later, Matt invited me to a small gathering with his friends. I was excited to spend time with the people he cared about, to show them that we were stronger than ever. But when we arrived, my heart sank. Sarah was there. She greeted Matt with her usual warmth, pulling him into a hug that lingered just a little too long. Her eyes flicked to me briefly, her smile tight and dismissive. Claire, she said, her tone polite but distant. Nice to see you. I forced a smile, determined not to let her ruin the evening. But as the night went on, her presence became harder to ignore. She monopolized Matt's attention, sharing inside jokes and reminiscing about their past. I felt like a bystander, an outsider in my own relationship. As we drove home that night, I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer. Matt, I said, my voice trembling, do you even see how she treats me? How she makes me feel invisible? You said things would change, but tonight felt like nothing has. He sighed, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Claire, it's not that simple. Sarah's been a part of my life for so long. She's like family to me. But what about me, Matt? I asked, my voice breaking. When do I get to feel like I'm enough? When do I get to feel like I'm your priority? His silence was deafening. Over the next few days, I found myself reflecting on our relationship. I thought about the love we shared, the moments of joy and connection that had brought us together. But I also thought about the pain, the constant feeling of being second to someone else, of having to fight for a place in his life. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to him, my heart heavy with the decision I had made. Matt, I began, my voice steady, I love you. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep feeling like I'm competing with someone who doesn't respect me or our relationship. I deserve more than that. He looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. Claire, I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. But I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. It's not just about what you're willing to do, Matt. It's about how I feel. And right now, I feel like I'm losing myself in this relationship. I need to take a step back. I need to find myself again. His face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the depth of his love for me. But love, I realized, wasn't always enough. That night, I packed a bag and left. As I drove away, a mix of emotions washed over me, heartbreak, relief, and a faint glimmer of hope. Hope that I could find the strength to rebuild myself. Hope that I could one day find a love that didn't require me to fight for respect. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. I reconnected with friends, took up hobbies I had abandoned, and spent time reflecting on what I truly wanted in a relationship. Matt reached out a few times, apologizing and asking for another chance. But I knew that I needed to stay true to myself. As much as I loved him, I couldn't go back to a relationship that made me question my worth. Walking away was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it was also the most empowering. It taught me the importance of setting boundaries, of valuing myself enough to demand respect. And while I still think about Matt and the love we shared, I know in my heart that I made the right choice. If this story resonates with you, like, comment, and subscribe.